I have
Crazy.
a whole new respect. To me, it's a very selfless job. And not only, Paul and I have taught for years and years and years. And like
Paul Butler.
Butler.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but years ago, he helped one of our now employees back when she was a teenager, probably headed down the wrong path, And Paul has told me stories about taking some kids out of a house, because of abuse or whatever, and says that just 20 years later, some woman comes up to him and is like, "You don't remember me, do you? 20 years ago, you saved my life." And just a selfless job. And selfless is a big part. I try to volunteer or whatever, but I've got a whole new perception for law enforcement.
Yeah. I have the same experiences. I mean, you help people and you run into them 10, 15 years later and they remember you. Like that was the most important thing in their life. And it's like, for us, it's like you go to the next one. There's just so much.
Yeah.
And so your mind tends to move on. And then you run into these people and it's like, oh my gosh, what an impact I had on those people. And I didn't even know it.
Do you feel like you deserve it? Like when they come up and give you accolades?
I'm not so sure about that. I am a little... although I'm on the radio 7 days a week, it's very easy because I'm in a room by myself. There's nobody watching.
Right.
When I'm in public and when I talk to people, I tend to be a little on the shy side, and I know people may not believe that, but I don't know. I mean, what do you do? Just say thank you.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like getting gifts at Christmas. I love giving the gifts, but man, I hate for everybody staring at me while I open mine.
Yeah. No, I'm the same way. And I asked, do you feel like you deserve it? Because I'll get cards when I go speak at schools or whatever. And I was telling a story at Sauk City High School about trying to help a young lady out that wanted to be a makeup artist. And I had a connection to like an Emmy award-winning makeup artist. And it falls apart, right? My parents never call me back or whatever. And a young lady comes up afterward and says, "Mr. Johnson, I like to be a makeup artist. Can you help me?" I was like, "Here's what I'm doing. I'm going to get a massage this afternoon. They do makeup and hair. I'll ask if you could shadow or whatever." We get through that. She goes and does it. And I get a card from her that says, "You'll never know the impact that you had on my life. Thank you so much." And I'm like, I ask one person one question.
Right.
So when I say, like I feel like I don't deserve that kind of stuff. And then another friend of mine did the same thing when she's an artist and started her own tattoo studio and that kind of stuff. She's like, "You were a huge part of that decision, just your encouragement." I was like, that's all I did was just encourage you. Mm-hmm. And so that's where this comes from, is just to try to encourage people to go chase their dreams. And you're going to fail. We've all failed. We fail all the time. But it's part of the learning process. And as long as you learn from it, then it's an education.
Well, I kind of fell into the radio business because through high school, through my upbringing, I wanted to be in law enforcement. I mean, I was a ROTC guy. I graduated from Sauk City High School. I've lived here my whole life. I mean, I've never lived anywhere else. I'm 47 years old. And there's always first in life. This is my first podcast.
Yeah.
I didn't know if this, we have the Ron Burgundy podcast we started this week. So we the heck with Ron Burgundy.
Yeah.
But so this is kind of neat for me. This is a first for me in my whole career to come out. But when I was in high school, I mean, I was an RTC guy. I had the flat top haircut.
Sure.
I had the big head with no neck. I looked like a cop, right? That guy. And so everybody's always like, "You're going to be a cop. You're going to be a cop, or you're going to go in the military." Well, I did not land in the military because I was overweight. I mean, the simple fact is that I reported to the Navy processing station, but they wanted me. I was going to be an air traffic controller, and I reported to MEPS in Columbia. Stayed there all day, ready to report to San Diego, only to be told I was 1.25 pounds too heavy.
Still get that off tomorrow.
I could have got it off that day if they could have gave me the right medication. I'd have gone to another room and. And I was devastated about that because I'm like, wow, man. I mean, I want to serve. That's what I want to do. I spent 4 years in the ROTC program and 4 years. And it was tough in high school because I know you talk about bullying. You think about wearing an ROTC uniform to high school.
Oh, sure.
I was like, oh my gosh, my dad's making me do it.
Right.
And it turned out to be 4 fantastic years, but that's how I ended up falling into radio because I was working part-time in radio in high school. Because I started June the 6th of 1989, the year I graduated high school. I fell into it. So the great things came out of me being disappointed from not being accepted in the military.
Right.
Is that I made that radio a career, but it started in high school.
Well, how'd you? Because I had a friend in high school, and it seems like he was doing like overnights or something on the weekends.
Yeah.
Now, how'd you get started in high school?
Well, I've grown up in the area. Like I said, I'm born and raised here. My dad was in business in Surfside Beach. I grew up in a hardware store, working in hardware, knowing everybody.
Right.
So I got to know some of the guys that were on the radio. So back in the day, and this was a long time ago, man, probably before you were a twinkle in your mommy's eye, there was a station called Big Yak, WYAK, and it was the big country station here. And this was before we had companies like, iHeart has hundreds of stations.
Right.
This was a mom and pop locally owned radio station, the Heritage Country Station, but they also had an AM station that played gospel music, and it was on cassette tapes. I mean, it was a cassette.
Wow.
It was 2 cassette decks, man. So
That's a lot of work.
yeah, you got to pay attention, right? Well, I didn't know anything about it, but the DJ at the time was a guy named the freaking Deacon. And the Deacon is still around. He was the voice of Myrtle Beach and radio for a long time, many years, different stations. But he called me and he's like, "Hey, we need a part-timer up here, man. Get your honky up here." And I'm like, I can't talk on the radio for sure. So, but all it was it played Christian music. So you would play this CD. I'm sorry, CD cassette. Yeah, way before CD. Play this cassette. That song's over. You play this cassette, and twice an hour they let me say the weather forecast. Actually, they let me give the temperature because over here across the street at Channel 13, at the time, the meteorologist's name was Van Denton with a D, Van Denton. So Van had a recorded weather. So he'd say that, it's 47 now in Myrtle Beach or, tonight, tomorrow, whatever he said. And I would get to come on twice an hour and say, "Thanks, Van. It's 47 in Conway, 46 in Georgetown. It's 48 in Myrtle Beach on WXMB." I would say that twice an hour, and I would call my friends every single time. "I'm getting ready to say the weather. Get ready. And I was 18 years old.
It's funny too because I could remember listening to the radio to record songs on cassette back then, and you'd have the record button pushed down and it'd be on pause, and as soon as the DJ would start and he'd hit the post, I mean, you would just dump the pause button, and it's crazy how technology has changed.
Yeah, and back in those days we would use a splice reel to do commercials. I mean, it was a reel-to-reel machine, and it was like and then you'd have to pull that tape out, splice it with a knife with a razor blade, and then splice it. I mean, it was a job. It was work, and it was cool for an 18-year-old kid who was in. I worked at the radio station.
That's right.
You couldn't mess with me.
Yeah.
Right. You working at the Water World down there? No, man. I'm on the radio.
I'm on air talent.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I got the lanyard.
Yeah.
Come on.
Yeah.
I'm all access. I quickly realized that probably wasn't a good living financially because although it's fun, at some point in life you have to make a decision to raise a family.
Right.
And I did work. I did do that full time up until 1997. I mean, I did everything because I moved to the country station, which was the Big Yak, WIAK, which was on the frequency 103.1, which Cumulus. I forget the name of I'm not sure what station's on there now, but I mean the frequency's still around.
Right.
But man, it was huge back then. I mean, we had a 32-foot Winnebago as our station vehicle that I drove it. I did the midnight to 6 when I actually started to be able to talk on the radio. I was on midnight to 6. Man, ain't nobody listening midnight to 6.
They'll let you go cut your teeth there.
Right. That's the reason I'm on there.
Yeah. But
I had some great mentors and some people that believed in me. And there's several of them still around. Dave Priest.
Yeah.
Dave Priest was is the guy who hired me.
Yeah. Dave's done work for us at Myrtle Beach Com, like our hold music and the message in there. We've got Dave to do that kind of stuff. But it's crazy you mentioned a mentor. That's what changed my life. Mm-hmm. A mentor. And I still to this day do not know what this man saw in me. But whatever it was, he completely changed my life, introduced me to his circle, what I call circle of influence, introduced me to that kind of stuff and taught me and allowed me to make mistakes and that kind of stuff. And mentors are huge. And I try to tell young people all the time, if you can find a mentor, it's not going to be easy. You know, the only thing in my mind that's easy is failure. It takes zero effort. But if you can find a mentor in something that you love to do, for me, it was just business. I didn't care about two-way radios or whatever, but it was just business. And yeah, man, he changed my life.
One thing that I'm big on is character. Now, I have failed in character before. I'm the first one to say, boy, I've made some tremendous mistakes in my life that I wish I could turn back time and fix.
Sure.
I would like to think that I have built upon those, and I don't mind talking about mistakes. You know, I actually, you know, having been in law enforcement now for 22 years, had I lived on excuses, I would have never been in law enforcement because it wasn't. Although when growing up, my dad was a worker. My dad was wealthy. My grandparents were wealthy, but it wasn't given to us. We had to work it.
Right.
We had to work for it. My dad was married 4 times. Okay. My mother, who is my mother, my dad was in the military, so my mother, I never really knew that well growing up. We got a little visitation, but it wasn't I didn't get to see her an awful lot. Right. And so my dad's second wife, it was a tough time. I was young. I went through a period of time where I was scared. It was alcohol was involved. My dad was an alcoholic.
Yeah. Mine too.
Made money.
Yeah.
Worked hard, had business.
Yeah.
But I lived it.
Yeah.
I lived it. My dad's third wife was the lady who actually raised me through the formidable years of my life.
Right.
Now, I will tell you that it was probably the first time in my life that I can remember that I wanted to use the word hate because I thought I hated her. Because she disciplined me. She spanked me.
Right.
She made me recut the grass when it was wrong.
So she was teaching you.
And it was strict. To me, listen, I'm a teenager. Yeah. I know more than you.
Yeah, we all did, didn't we?
Yeah, leave me alone. I want to go do my thing. But she was the discipliner in the family. My dad was not. My dad was the worker.
Right.
But I felt... and I will tell you the point where I lost that word, but I felt like I hated her because I thought she was picking on me.
Right.
I'm growing up. Let me grow up. And so, the day that I gave that hate word up, I was a new deputy, and it was around Easter, and I was home asleep. I was on night shift. And the phone rang, and if it's all right. So if it's 2:00 in the afternoon on night shift, that's 2:00 in the morning for normal folks,
right?
And you wake up in a daze. The phone rings, and it is a sheriff from down in Georgia. I don't even remember the county now. And he goes, he told me the name. Do you know her? Yes, sir, Sheriff. I sure do. He goes, I need you to come down to my county in Georgia. I said, well, for what? I've worked all night. He goes, she's took her own life.
Wow.
She took her life. And I'm like, what? And I'm thinking I'm in a daze, man. I'm thinking well, this is a bad dream. Let's wait. Anyway, so the bottom line, it was not a bad dream. And so the sheriff, I worked for a different agency at the time. The sheriff sent somebody to pick me up. We drove 5 hours. And yeah, I had to ID her body. She had went in the woods and took her life. And so, it's unexplainable to me. Yeah. I just because I work cases like that, and so at her funeral, my dad, of course, had her buried on his property, and I remember looking at her that day as we buried her, and I said, "The word hate will leave my soul today."
Sure.
Because how do you absolutely hate? We can forgive people, and what she was doing to me was right to her.
Yeah.
It was wrong to me because I was a kid.
Right.
And so I didn't have all my facilities there.
Yeah.
And so there was a lot of bad things that happened through childhood because people looked at us like we're wealthy, we're rich. We got a huge house in Surfside. We had a satellite dish. Right. Remember the old big old metal satellite?
8-foot dishes.
Yeah. I'm like, y'all know my house.
Yeah.
Satellite dish.
Yeah.
The swimming pool, the whole deal. But Daddy drove a Mercedes Benz. She had a big, they had the nice cars. Me, I walked it to work or I drove my little moped that I bought, my little Honda moped.
Right.
Until I could buy a car. And so what people see what people see from the outside is not necessarily what's happening on the inside.
Absolutely.
And that's the same way in the law enforcement field, because problems in crime and domestic violence and alcoholism and drug addicts live behind the gate sometimes, or they live in a mobile home park, or they're homeless.
Right.
So, and just because somebody's homeless don't mean they're on drugs, don't mean they're just because somebody lives in a gate don't mean they're not an alcoholic.
Yeah.
I understand.
I was listening to a radio station out of New York one day, and they were interviewing a homeless guy, which I want one on my podcast. Mm-hmm. And his story was he used to be successful, owned a business, all that, and his family got killed in a car wreck. Mm-hmm. And he just couldn't recover from it. Ended up losing his business, losing everything, his whole family was killed in an accident, and just fell apart, and everybody's got a story, and it's super important. But now, and I had a therapist friend of mine on talking about mental health and suicide and stuff like that. And I think about, Robin Williams, with these people from the outside who think they've got it all. Mm-hmm. You can't, it's mental illness. I mean, it doesn't matter what you've got or whatever. And for them, the pain is so bad that they're going to take that final step. I was watching a documentary about jumpers from the Golden Gate Bridge, and they had a few of them that survived, and they all said the same thing. As soon as they stepped off, they knew they didn't want to die.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. I put on my Facebook a lot of positive encouragement sometimes, especially on Sunday mornings, because we live in a world where we just send a text or it's not that personal.
Yeah.
Like for my guys that work directly for me, I'll write them a handwritten note if I'm just thinking about them or they do something good, and you think that you've given them some big award, but you've taken personal time.
Yeah, it means a lot of time, because it's something we don't have. None of us have time. Time's something we're not going to get back, and to take that time just to respond. We were talking earlier, just to respond to a comment online or whatever that lets people know you're engaging with them and you appreciate it, and that kind of stuff is very important.
I understand the part of like the celebrity aspect of. I mean, it's such a bigger scale with Robin Williams, and nobody would have ever thought that Robin Williams, and he took his life in a very tragic way. I mean, you could have, you don't want anybody to take your life, but the way he did, it's just terrible. It's terrible all the way around. But like on a local level, and I know you're going to have Ed Piotrowski on, but I mean, you wonder sometimes that how does he respond to. Because everybody loves him. Everybody, they send him a message, and it is a smaller scale than Ed for me. But I mean, there's 30,000 people on the Gator Facebook page alone. Yeah. I'm maxed out on my social media at 5,000 on Facebook, and then Twitter and Snapchat and Instagram. And so I believe that it's important. People take time to contact you.
It is, but even like that, talking about like you and Ed, I mean, you're kind of unelected faces of the community, right? Because you guys spend a ton of time outside of your both full-time careers to do community service kind of stuff, whether, and I'm sure you did it as well, but, Ed's doing stuff from the polar plunge, and he posted a video the other day about prom nights. I mean, it's just, it's crazy the amount of work that folks like you two do in the community.
But when the community gives to you, you love to give back to the community.
Sure.
So, there's 4 of us in my family. My wife, I've been married to her almost 25 years. God bless her soul. We met in radio. She will deny this story, but I'm telling you, this story is true. I met her on the request line of the radio station.
Okay.
So that's how we got to know each other. And so 25 years later, we're still married. My daughter just graduated Coastal Carolina with a biology degree. Cool. She's 24 years old. She works up at the vet hospital beside East Coast Honda up here, On Point.
Yeah.
So she's been there a couple of years. My son is 20 years old. He's in HVAC. He works for a company in Pawleys Island. So one took the career of college, one did not. But so our family is set. But when my son was born, and this is where I really knew that community service had to be a part of my life. My son was born with a rare, what they call craniosynostosis. My son was a full-term baby, but he did not have a soft spot. His skull was fused. So basically, it's just a hard
right,
and it's fused. And he also had a lung disease, so he had lungs that were underdeveloped, and he had a skull that was overdeveloped, which was problemsome. 20 years ago.
Right.
And so he was able to come home after a month in the ICU down in Charleston, came home for a week and had to go back, or may have stayed home a month. I can't remember. But anyway, he had to have surgery to make a soft spot. So basically, he was cut from ear to ear and in a Frankenstein form, because what they want to do is they can't cut it straight across because you want the hair to be able to lay back when it grows.
Right.
But so that kid had to grow up like that, and he always loved his hair short, so that scar was seen and bullying, laughed at, made fun of. But back when he was born, I didn't have nothing, man. Both of my kids were born. I had WIC and Medicaid when both of my children were born. Now we just weren't making a lot of money.
Yeah.
We were blessed to have government services when they were growing up, and so the community stepped in and helped us financially,
Sure.
emotionally, spiritually. I can remember during that surgery days that I was like, because you got to pay for hotels in Charleston, you can't go back and forth, gas, everything else, and I can remember a local seafood place in Murrells Inlet. And Murrells Inlet Seafood. I remember him showing up at my door with this box of seafood, fish, crab. He's like, "Look, I know y'all need help. Take it."
Yeah.
And I was like, "Holy cow!" So, as I continue to live my life and to do things that I do, like my mobile DJing, listen. Everybody wants it for free, or they want me to give them a break.
Yeah.
But you get calls for charities, and my wife is like, "How many of these things are you going to continue to do for free, as long as I can do it?"
Until they quit calling.
Yeah. You can't do them all, but even in life now, and in my home, we have a basement that has flooded on us 4 times. That's insurance won't cover. How do you bounce back from that without having friends or family or just total strangers helping you financially and with labor?
What was the story after the hurricane? You eating dinner at Outback, or so? What was that? I remember seeing.
Well, I was. It was late one night, and I had DJ'd a wedding. I was by myself, feeling sorry for myself. Listen, if anybody's watching this, if they can't, be truthfully say they've never felt sorry for themselves,
Sure.
reevaluate your life, because it's human. It's what we do. So I was feeling sorry for myself, and I said, I'm going to go eat me the biggest steak I can. My family was at home. So I went and sat at Outback, and I probably looked miserable. And so I sat there, I ate, I looked at my Facebook. I was just on the phone by myself. Nobody said a word to me. I didn't say, I didn't look at nobody. If you look people in the eyes sometimes, especially when you're known, you feel the need that you got to stop and talk to them, because I do that. I didn't look at anybody. I didn't want anybody to recognize me.
You were in that spot. You didn't.
I was having a bad day. I'm thinking, how am I going to fix this house again? And so after I finish up my meal, the lady brings me the receipt back to the table, and she goes, "This couple that was sitting right over here paid your bill." And I'm like, "What? For what?" I mean, because I have money. Let's face it. Not a lot, but I could have paid the bill. I'm just going through a rough time, because my life is on Facebook. I mean, I put the good, the bad, and the ugly out there with my life. It's an open book. It has been my whole life. And not only did they pay the bill, it came with a note. And that particular note was the sweetest thing I'd read in a very, very long time. I didn't know these people, but they knew me from the radio. They knew that we were going through tough times, and it was the sweetest thing. And I wept. Sat at that Outback table and just wept, because I'm like, man, you never can give up on good people.
No, I love doing that kind of stuff. We started years ago at Christmas because I want to teach my daughter to give back, to be selfless. I used to live in a trailer probably smaller than this room, and we had nothing, welfare, all that kind of stuff. And now that we can afford to, I want to give back as much as possible. And I would prefer to give time, but there's only so much time. It's easy to go get money out of the bank or whatever, but time is difficult. So every year at Christmas, we've decided we're going to give $100 gifts just to random waiters, waitstaff, whatever. We've done that for several years, but this year was my wife and I's 20th wedding anniversary. We've been together for 25 years, and she's like, "What do you want for anniversary?" I said, "I want to go do dinner, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and leave $500 tips."
Wow.
And So we were going to do that, and it's like, it may be difficult to do this in one day because you don't want to just give it away to somebody you don't feel like deserves it. And I was at Dunkin' Donuts on 3rd Avenue going through drive-thru, and it was the sweetest lady on the other end of the drive-thru speaker. And I tell my wife, I was like, I found somebody that I want to give one of them to. And so I bring her through the next morning. She's still there, and asked Vicky. I asked the lady at the drive-thru. I was like, "Are you working this weekend?" "Yes, working." So we go back on Sunday. We go in. I've went to the bank. I've got some cash. We're ready to do this, and I don't see her in there. So we sat down and we're eating, and she walks out. So I go up there. She doesn't know me. I met her in drive-thru. She sees hundreds of people a day, right? She doesn't know me. And I was like, "Man, when you get a second, do you mind to come over to our table? I want to talk to you." And she comes over. She's kind of guarded. I'm assuming she doesn't know. Am I getting yelled at, or are you going to complain what's going on? And I had the money folded up to where you couldn't see the denominations. And I told her what we were doing. It's our anniversary. This is what we want to do. We want to give you some of the joy that we've had over the last 20 years. Here you go, please. And she's like, "No, I can't take it." I was like, "Yes, ma'am, I want you to. This is for you."
Sure.
She takes and just sticks it in her pocket and walks off, goes to the back. I'm assuming then she looks at it and counts it or whatever, and comes back. Now she's crying.
Wow.
She's giving us big hugs. My wife's crying, that kind of stuff. But it could have been that helped put tires on her car. It could have been, helped with Christmas for
paid her back rent.
Anything.
Yeah.
And, but even small stuff. I'll go through Bojangles or something all the time and pay for the person behind me because it could start their day off just it could change the course of their day or whatever. And we do a lot of that stuff. But like during the hurricane, the way the community come together and these kids bagging sand, out in the sun, bagging sandbags.
That was an inspiration.
Oh my gosh.
That I had to go witness myself. I was out there in my uniform bagging with them because I'm like, these are kids in our community that took this initiative.
Yeah.
That was crazy to see.
It is. Well, the other thing, so my daughter goes to Lakewood, and
I went to Lakewood.
Did you?
Yes.
So
that's my elementary school.
Good. So Miss Roberts sends out an email and says, "Hey, we're trying to put bag lunches together." I didn't realize until we had a child in school that so many kids only get to eat at school. There's no other food.
That's correct.
And so we were out of school for about 3 weeks. They're trying to put lunches together, and we go and I tell my wife, I was like, "We want to do something." So we go and load an enclosed trailer full of 1,600 juice boxes.
I saw it on Facebook.
But
fantastic.
But when I look at that, again, we did the minimum. I went to the bank and I went to Sam's. The people that really deserve credit were the people that made 1,500 sandwiches.
Wow.
That delivered 1,500 lunches. Those are the people that did it. And again, they gave up time. I didn't have the time to give up, so it was easy for me to just go spend an hour, fill a trailer up and drop it off or whatever. But we never do that stuff. And if you do it for recognition or anything else, it's for the wrong reasons. Like I use my company's trailer, and they're asking, and one of my friends shared it because he's friends with the principal down there. And the company says, "Can we put this on our Facebook page?" I was like, "No, it wasn't for that. That's not why I did it. I didn't do it for recognition. I didn't do it for now. If you want to give me some money, I'll go buy some more stuff and we'll put it on. And so that's what I did. I got another $5,000. We went and loaded the trailer full of, cases of diapers and cleaning stuff,
right,
and took it all to Socastee and helped those guys out. In there, I meet somebody who was a coach whose home is flooded out right now. And instead of worrying about his home, he's unloading this trailer to help others.
Yeah.
It's amazing when you sit back and you look at community and what they do and just normal people.
That's why you have to ignore ignorance. You have to, because when you deal with the public every day, you're going to meet people that are just nasty.
Sure.
Nothing makes them happy, and it discourages you. You can be a waitress and have a bad table, but you got to remember the best table you ever had might be next.
Yeah.
So you can't take the problems from that table. And so we have to look at the good. But the world, listen, cut on your television and watch the evening news. And I watch the same news every night. I don't know why I should change. But the first from 6:30 to 6:57 is negative.
I don't watch it.
Okay? It's not. I'm telling you, it's negative, okay? But the last 3 minutes of the show is their person of the day. So you're waiting to the last 3 minutes of a show to tell me something good? Why do you want me to watch it? And we have to focus, we have to focus on the positive. And I know that we're doing this podcast today and it'll air at a different time. Today happens to be National Do Something Good for a Stranger Day. So actually go out in good deed. I mean, how cool would it be that if, and I will talk about this on my radio show today. Look, I shouldn't have to tell you that it's a national day to go do a good deed.
Yeah.
But, and like when I do something good, I don't want anybody to know it, but how cool would it be to have a hidden camera just to see their expression?
Yeah.
Wow, man.
Well, when we give gifts or whatever at restaurants or whatever, we don't record it because I don't have a problem with people that do record it because I think it could inspire others to go do it. That's just not the reason we're doing it.
Right.
We want to have a connection. We want to help somebody out. But a few years ago in the Smokies when they had that massive fire, we went up at Christmas. We're in Waffle House eating breakfast one morning. So we're like, this is what we want to do. We want to give her the gift. And we do that and we just leave it and walk out. She comes running out, and she just lost her home. It wasn't. I mean, it's $100, but it meant the world to her right then, and it's worth so much more for me. Yeah, to be able to change people and have that effect. But I was going to ask you how you felt about, because I've seen people that just video it for the reaction and to try to go viral. But if it inspires somebody else to do it, I mean, I really don't.
I would never want to do something and give a gift and do something secretive and have me in it.
Yeah.
I'd like to look in and see somebody's reaction because it'll just fill your heart, I'm sure. Yeah. But when my dad passed away, and I will talk to you about that just briefly because it was where I learned character. Now, I'm not saying that since this time that I didn't let my character lax, because I have. We all do it. But my dad had a little bit of money. And my dad, there's 4 of us, okay? So there's 3 brothers and a sister. Thank God I have a very beautiful sister. She don't look like us. I love that kid. But my dad left us a little something. We have a shopping center in Surfside, and he left us a little cash. And so I was able to do some good deeds. And one of the good deeds that I did, now here's the mistake I made as a husband. I just kept it from my wife and didn't tell her because I was like, well, she's going to be angry. I'm giving away money. And so I kept it a secret. Now, when I finish this story, you're going to be like, yeah, my wife would have thought the same thing. All right. So in law enforcement, we have interns. In radio, we have interns. Right. So I had an intern. And so the intern was in her senior year of college. And she was a good Christian kid, man. She prayed regularly. She was in church regularly. Her parents were hard workers. And she got in my car one day and said she's soon to graduate. She goes, I guess I'm not even going to finish school now. And I said, for what? What's going on with you? And she showed me this bill. This receipt she got from college, and it's in the upstate. It was a Christian college. I can't remember the name of it, but they gave her a bill because her internship. I didn't realize this. They charged for it. So it was a $997 bill, and it was what she had to pay, and then before her graduation. And she goes, my parents can't pay this. I can't pay this. So she goes, I want to still do the internship, but she may just have to put it off a semester. And it just hit me because I'm like, here is a kid that I would love for to be my daughter.
Right.
And I said, I'll tell you what you do. We were in Conway. I said, you get in my car. I know people. I know people that are on campgrounds. I know people that ain't no money to them.
Yeah.
It's a lot to us.
Yeah.
But I tell you, when I left there, I knew I weren't going anywhere but to my bank, because I was going to be sure that kid finished that dream.
Yeah.
And so when I went to the bank, and I have never told this story ever and I'm not going to say her name, but because you don't want to toot your own horn. This was many years ago, but it did something for my heart. And I walked in that bank and I was talking to the bank lady and I said, hey, do me a favor. Go grab that check for me. They're doing a checkup for me while I talked to whoever it was down in Surfside at Conway National. And she brought the check over. She goes, they made a mistake and made it out to me. And the bank manager told her, she said, it's for you, honey. We want you to finish school. Yeah. And she just like, well, you think it was overwhelming for her? For me, that was $997 well spent, okay? Yeah. The problem is, I didn't share that with my wife. I just did that behind her back, and I kept it from her because I just didn't want to start anything at home. And not that my wife would have probably been all for it.
Right.
But look, here's a girl. I'm a married guy. Why are you giving a girl money?
Sure.
And so it never came up till like a year and a half, maybe 2 years later. This young lady got married and sent me an invitation for the wedding. And finally, at that point, I told my wife, it's time I need to tell her what I did, because it wasn't anything negative at all. I was doing a good deed. And so she, this girl had a dream. She wanted to be a chemist. She wanted to work in a lab. She felt like that she was going to have to move away from here as a chemist, get away from this area.
Yeah.
The Lord placed his hands on her after that, after she graduated, and an agency here in Horry County opened the job for their first ever chemist. Never had one ever.
Sure.
She applied for it, and guess where she still works today? She works as a chemist in Conway, South Carolina, doing what she dreamed of. Yeah. And I really feel that, God placed me in that position to be able to be sure.
Well, those forks in the road, I mean, if you wouldn't have done that, would she have found it somewhere else? Would she have quit school? What would her life look at? Like, I could remember growing up, and I shared this with Paul Butler one time, and I've never said it publicly because of the connotation with it, but I could remember being with a buddy of mine. We lived in Tennessee, and the two of us were talking about growing marijuana because we were both super poor, and what do we do? Fortunately, we both chose the path not to do that. Mm-hmm. But those forks in the road, I mean, they have tremendous impacts on your life in the future. And so that's why, like I said earlier, the cards, the invitation to the wedding and stuff like that, it's not a big deal for me. I mean, $1,000 is a lot of money, but to change somebody's life for $1,000, oh my gosh, they'll never forget.
And I DJ'd her wedding also. Yeah. So she invited me. But, going back to your question, would she have found it somewhere else? Yeah. Chances are, because there's a lot of people like me that wouldn't want to see a kid. Because, listen, I quit college. My grandparents were wealthy. They paid for me to go. My second year over at Georgetown Tech in criminal justice, I quit. You know why? Because the dean made me mad. Yeah. I thought the guy was picking on me, and I was just shy of graduating with an associate's degree. Right. And I was like, and he's still over there too. I just saw him last week, and they tell me, he's a great guy, but I was 20 years old. I was thinking different.
You're a kid, and I talk about that a lot. My mother, when I was 5, my mother had me when she was 17. So when I'm 5, she's 22, runs off in the middle of the night with her boyfriend, carries my brother and I across the country. Your mother and your father, they're always older and wiser. Mm-hmm. My mom was a 22-year-old kid doing 22-year-old kid stuff. It took me a long time to realize that, because I was upset that she snatched me away from my dad in the middle of the night. But it was, now that I'm older, she was a kid doing dumb kid stuff, making emotional decisions and not logical decisions, and all that kind of stuff. So, and I share all those stories because they may be embarrassing or whatever, but I share them because I think it's important for some people. They may be struggling with something right now. There may be some kid that hears this that needs another $1,000 to get through school, and just go ask, go look for help. And I had my niece needed some money, was asking to try to raise money for, I don't know, color guard or something. I'm like, I'll give you money, but when you ask people for money, you can't quit.
Right.
You can't go ask people for money to go do this and then get into it a week later and quit. You have to see this commitment through, because that's what they're giving you the money for, is for you to see that commitment through. And then, Mom talking about giving people money. It's funny because my wife gets upset if you give somebody money and they ask, I'm a little short, can I get $400? I'll give it back to you. And then they'll be at, Outback posting pictures online. That drives her. And I'm like, look, you can't, when you give it away, it's theirs to do whatever with.
You can't judge, right?
Yeah, you can, but I get the frustration. But yeah, that really, really.
But it's so neat to be able to forget the money, to be able to give somebody your time is so much more valuable to me. And I have seen that through the flooding of my house 4 times. And even some of the same people. And it's humbling, man, to be able to, people, donate money and help you. But people that come to your rescue and offer, and offer time is absolutely incredible to me.
Yeah. During the last storm, is it Rosewood down beside Soxty that always floods?
Yeah.
My brother and I went down there just to offer to help people. if they had a U-Haul in the front yard, we stopped to see if they needed two good backs to help them get their stuff out.
Amen.
I had a friend down there. We stopped to see if they were moving, and she thought she had flood insurance and found out that day that they didn't have any. Had to go through, and I think it got their house and stopped at the next one. But that was a terrifying flood.
Yeah,
because it took forever. I mean, you'd look at the DNR maps, and it showed water all the way up on 707 and stop. I mean, it could have been devastating.
I hope
way more devastating.
I hope that you and I never see such devastation ever again in our lives.
Oh my gosh.
Unfortunately, our children may. I was on vacation on a cruise ship. I was on an 8-day Carnival cruise on the Carnival Sunshine when the hurricane hit here, and I got to tell you, I made it the worst cruise I can remember. I was on the streets of St. Martin. Who doesn't want to be in St. Martin enjoying sunshine and a vacation? And for 8 solid days, I did nothing but try to get a signal on my phone to reload the new maps.
Yeah, because you knew what was coming.
Knew what was coming.
Yeah.
And so I'm reaching, and I knew I had left my 20-year-old son here by himself. Now, he's a big man. I'm a grown man, Dad. You ever lived through a hurricane, son? You ever done that? I said, so he was at my house, living at my house. And so I was able to text over a really, really terrible internet service on a cruise ship. But Amanda Holly, she does the weather over at Channel 13, and also Ed, were so religious in texting me, this is what's happening. And I'm not talking about just a bunch of BS. The truth. Look, it's going to hit. It's going to be really bad. Yeah. And not only that, but Amanda texting, checking on my son for me, and my friends that I work with. I mean, you cannot put a price on that with people.
I have 2 employees that actually are next door neighbors that live in Soxtee, and the map showed water beyond their house. And my brother, who just moved, lived behind St. James, and the map showed water up to literally their front door. Mm-hmm. I took my employees, and we went and moved every one of these people out of their houses.
Wow.
We removed everything, carried it to the office, and as soon as the water started receding, we moved it off. And none of them, the water didn't come close to any of their homes, but for me, it wasn't worth it. Yeah. Because none of them had flood insurance. We're not putting them through this, but we had calls daily because we were just acquired in July, and the acquiring company, we had calls daily about the storm and how do we take care of our customers, because our customers are all public safety, 911 centers and stuff like that. And on every call, it was after we got through the public safety, it was, now what do we do for our employees? Right. What employees are going to be impacted or whatever? And then, I had my old sales manager went to go run one of our stores in Panama City. And when he lived in Myrtle Beach, he was one of those, hurricane party guys. I'm not leaving. And they stayed through. Michael, he's like, never again. The scariest thing I've ever been through in my whole life. He's like, I thought my condo was going to collapse on me. I'm never staying again. And I try to tell people all the time, what's the point? Best case scenario, you don't have power and water for 3 or 4 days and you don't die. Just go somewhere else and, go take care of your family.
We're going to have to live through hurricanes. Obviously, we chose this place.
Yeah.
But that flood was something like I'd never experienced. I mean, and I actually saw Lee Hendrick, who's the fire chief of the city of Conway.
Lee's going to do the show too.
Lee is fantastic. If you'll go to his Facebook page, look at the picture he took yesterday or the day before, and it is a very eerie picture. Did you see it?
Yeah.
Of the water line?
Yeah.
It's crazy, right?
He is one heck of a photographer as well.
And he is a very good friend of mine. My cruise was ruined. Because I worried. My wife and daughter tried their best to overcome that, but I'm a worrier. I want to help. I'm out there in the ocean. So the cruise was terrible. No, the cruise wasn't. It wasn't their fault. It was my fault.
Right.
But I knew I had to make that up to them. So we're actually retaking take 2 in May. But ain't no hurricanes in May.
That's right.
So we're going to go. But Lee was on this same cruise back in December or maybe November. So he got me a couple of T-shirts from that cruise line.
Okay.
And so I put it in my wife's and daughter's stocking to say, hey, we doing a retake. But he is a fine guy, the fire chief of Conway, a great guy.
He is.
I wanted to tell you about quitting because we were talking about quitting, and you never quit. Just, the people expect if they're going to give you money, don't quit what you're doing.
Right.
Achieve it. Quitting was one of my biggest failures in life. When I quit college. And, I knew because the money, I had the time, the money was there. It was free. My grandparents are going to pay it.
Right.
But everybody doesn't need a college degree, and I get that. My son's in HVAC, making as much money as I am right now. All right, he doesn't have a college degree. He chose the Marines. Now he's back. He's in the laborer. He's a laborer, making as much money as me. The world needs many of them.
Yeah.
But when I realized, for me personally, that quitting college was a terrible mistake was many years ago. When the magistrate in Murrells Inlet was retiring, Judge Moeller, he's my neighbor. He's a fantastic man. Now, when he became judge, they're appointed for 4-year terms, a magistrate judge, and so they appointed people in the community, the common man. Not a guy who's been an attorney for 20 years.
Right.
They wanted, as a magistrate, the legislator wanted a magistrate that understood common people and common problems. Okay, so that's how you got a magistrate. So when Judge Moeller retired, I got a call from Senator Ray Cleary. Now Ray's a dentist in Surfside. He's not doing that senator work anymore, but he called me and said, "Hey, Bill Moeller's retiring. I'd like for you to be the next judge." Wow. I was like, "Are you kidding me? I'm that guy. I can be a judge." He goes, "Yep." I was speechless. I'm like, couldn't believe it. Called me back the next day. He goes, "We have to have Senate confirmation hearings and so forth and so on. I need a copy of your 4-year diploma, 4-year degree from college." He said, "They changed the rules. You got to have a degree now. Do you have that?" I was like, "No, I quit. I don't have it. I don't have a degree." And I'm like, he's like, "Oh no." He said, "Yeah, you got to have a 4-year degree now." And I wept again in my life. I cried because I'm like, I gave up on something that was given to me, and I quit it. Yeah. And today I could be Judge Jeff.
Judge Jeff.
Yeah, at Judge Jeff. And I blew it.
Yeah.
And so I guess you got to make a decision. Well, it's something. Listen, my son Dakota, God bless him. If it weren't for the help from many people, he'd still be in the 12th grade at St. James High School, not passing. So he's not the college cutout kid. But now he's out making a great living and doing jobs that this country has to have.
Yeah, it wasn't for me. I made it 3 days. I should have never graduated high school. I actually quit high school because we were laying out of school. I wasn't going to graduate. I tried adult ed. That didn't work. I went back for my 5th year and ended up graduating. Moved to Decatur, Alabama. Went to Calhoun Community College for about 3 days. I was like, this isn't for me. Yeah. But for me, it was I learned from doing. And I learned from making mistakes. And so, again, fortunately, I found a mentor that gave me a shot and would let me make mistakes and learn from them. He'd keep me between the ditches, but it was life-changing experience for me.
Everybody makes mistakes. Unfortunately, the world is made up of what we call keyboard cowards. Yeah. They can sit behind their keyboard and judge everything you're doing.
Of course.
Judge the politics, judge the bosses, yell at the referees because they're making the bad call. What are you doing with your life? Yeah. You're sitting back here complaining and griping from your keyboard. Yeah, why?
I can't deal with it. I get it out of my life. That's what I tell young people. It's when you and I were growing up, it's you are who you surround yourself with. Mm-hmm. And now it's not who, it's what. If you get on your phone and you scroll through your whatever feed and you're just surrounded and consumed by hate,
yeah,
you're going to be a hateful, but you'll have hate in your heart. If you surround yourself with people that play the victim role nonstop, you're going to fall into that. I've seen it in the car business when I was in the car business. You'd have one superstar and 9 guys that were just kind of mediocre. That one didn't lift the 9 up. They drug him down to their level. So I share with people all the time is, sometimes you just got to get those negative influences out of your life, especially if it's stuff that's not willing to help you get to your goals or whatever.
But think about it. How do we do that in this community when we are surrounded for our young people? We want to go out. You and I, we want to go give a positive message. We want you to learn from our negative. But when you cut that television on, it's negative nonstop. It's griping, complaining. We got Congress and that's on divided. Everything is an issue. And so you cut on the TV. We go out to young people and preach, tell the truth, tell the truth, tell the truth, tell the truth. The cops get you, tell the truth.
Right.
You cut on the TV, you watch live PD. What's the first thing that happens? That adult, that grown man driving that car tells the police a lie.
Right.
And we're out trying to teach the total opposite. And grown people that we've elected, people that we trust, people that are celebrities are out portraying. Now, listen, I'm not throwing stones at anybody because I've made tremendous mistakes in my life that I have that I pray about, I've asked for forgiveness about, and so. But I'm just saying in a general term. Yeah. So our kids can turn the radio and TV on at any time and see the total opposite of what we're going out trying to do. Yeah. And it's just absolutely crazy. But if they will rely on that one simple word that I said a little while ago, and that is your character, and the character that you may not remember growing up with, but it is instilled in us. Because I don't know about you, but like my grandparents, I believe that they could have walked on water. They could have been the second and third people to walk across water. Yeah, they were that great of folks. And I knew that I had that in my heart. Did I lose it? Yeah, at times. Did I forget or think it didn't care? I did. And then some people's like, well, character. Well, I mean, look, I can ask somebody, tell me what's your character in one word, and they'll have to think about it. What is character? What does it mean? I mean, it can be anything. It can be an adjective. It could be, honesty. You're an honest person, but whatever the case may be. But it's simply meaning is the person who you are when or how you act when you believe nobody's looking, right? Yeah. And I want to tell you that through the death of my father is when it came back into my heart and in my life. And I probably there's no class I teach, no group I speak to that I don't mention it, because at the age of 52 years old, my dad came down with Alzheimer's disease at 52.
At 52?
Yes. My dad was a businessman, had plenty of money, had any car he wanted. He had him a young wife at the time. So you think he's living life. He was an alcoholic his whole life. So I have a scan of his brain from when he first got diagnosed at 52, what his brain looked like, and the damage that had been done from alcoholism. And then I had it again from when he passed. And if you think that, you hear your grandma say that, you don't do it, kills brain cells. Quit. You can't drink or you can't smoke marijuana, whatever they say. It's true. I saw the scans. And at 52,
it's a brutal disease.
Terrible.
I had an uncle that literally just passed away before Christmas from it, and he was a monster of a man, football coach, and to see this man that everyone in the community looked up to just. He didn't know if he was coming or going, and then the work. Like my aunt is a saint. It'd have been easy to put him in a home somewhere and just let somebody else deal with it. And her and my mother just took this man until the day died. But it is a brutal disease.
I have somebody right now that I know people that have it. I know a lady in Murrells Inlet right now that's I guess she's in her early 60s, and the family is dealing with this right now. And there's always those decisions on, do you put them in a home? How long can you keep them home? And I see this family in turmoil. My dad was self-pay. He had money. So paying $10,000 a month to a nursing home wasn't a big deal for us because my dad had the money. Right. People that don't have money, that can't afford that kind of money, you keep them at home and you struggle. But at 52 years old, you think that you have a thriving father. I will soon be 48 years old. Yeah. And my dad, when my dad was 48, he didn't think in 4 years he would not know anybody. But I think it was a turning point in my life because we're only talking about 9 years ago. So I was a deputy sheriff. I'm working every day. My dad's in a nursing home at 52 years old.
I didn't even know the disease. I mean, that young you could even get. That is crazy.
Yeah. Oh yeah, definitely. Now he knew me at 52. He knew us. But the day I realized it was I took him, he was in a nursing home in the North End, and I took him to Ryan's, I don't think they're around anymore. They closed, like Ryan's Buffet.
It's still up on the North End. That's the only one left is the one in Ryan's, North Myrtle.
It was a test for me because I wanted to see what he could remember. And so I took him there for lunch. And so I went and sat back down at the table. I said, Daddy, go up there and get you something to eat now. He goes up to the bar. I wanted him to go by himself. And he could not find his way back. Yeah. He was lost. And so at that point, I knew the right decision was made to put him in the nursing home, and we moved him down south to Garden City. But when you lay in bed and do nothing, you deteriorate. You lose muscle mass.
Sure.
You have other problems. So I remember, and the caretakers, you got to take a break too. You got to do what. So we were actually in North Carolina, in Cherokee on vacation for a 3-day weekend. And I got a call from the nursing home, and they said, "You got to come back. Your dad won't eat. He's in bad shape. He won't eat." He was nonverbal at this time. Okay.
And how old was he at this time?
He was 56.
Okay.
4 years later. Okay, so he was 56 years of age. You ever been in a hotel room and people a hospital room and people will be talking? It's like, shh, don't say that. You don't know if they hear you. Somebody might be in a coma, or they may be. See, look at there. Right. There's your guard dog out there barking. And so you never know if. And so I always wondered that too, because Daddy was nonverbal at the time, but I'd still talk to him. He was looking around. He would lay around. You might have to let your old dog in here, your guard dog. That's all right.
I like to shoot it.
Just like my house, but I knew I had to come home to see if Daddy if he really would eat. And so I came back to the nursing home, and I mean, really, this is just like being at my house. But the dog barking, I feel right at home.
Good.
So when I went in there, they're like, he won't eat. I said, give him some food. Let me see. And they put some applesauce on the end of a sponge, and they put it in his mouth. And I just knew he was going to suck it right off. I know my daddy well. It was like nothing. And I don't know if he understands us.
Yeah.
I don't know. And he turned over, he looked at me, and I said, "Daddy, I want you to tell me something." And I'm emotional over this thing.
Sure.
And I said, "Are you hungry, Daddy?" And he just looked at me, and his eyes were open wide, and he wept, and tears came down his face. And I knew at that point he's understood me for a long time, brother.
Yeah.
But that man was starving. He was hungry, but his mind wasn't working right. So later that week, I was working at the sheriff's office, and he had a stroke. So when you have a stroke, you lose. You can lose a lot of things. Partial paralysis.
Sure.
One thing you do lose is a lot of times control of your bowels, control of your bladder. How humiliating. Now, understandably, I know that this man knows what's going on. The man's starving. He looked at me, cried the biggest. I've never seen my dad shed a tear ever until that day. And so I go to the ER down at Waccamaw, and this was emotional for me. He had messed himself, urinated himself. He had had an accident on himself, stunk to high heavens. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And there's people that are having to clean that up.
Yeah.
I'm thinking he's looking around. He knows what's going on. They move him upstairs. I went back to work for about 6 hours. On the way home, and I told you all this to tell you this point. I go back home and I go to the 3rd floor of the Waccamaw Hospital to visit with him. And as I get closer to his room, I hear a voice coming from the room, just singing Amazing Grace. Amazing Grace, just singing. I'm like, no, first of all, nobody should even know he's here, right? And so I'm in full uniform, and I peek around the into the room, because a lot of those hospitals, and you've been there, I'm sure, many times. You can see the sink, and you see the mirror, which bounces back to the bed, so I can see who's there. They don't see me. I see them. Well, it's a little nurse guy. The little nurse guy was in there. He lifted Daddy out of the bed. He put him in his chair. He's changing his socks. Amazing grace. He's just singing to him, just sweet singing to my dad. All right, John, I'm going to get you back in your beds clean now. He said, I'm going to cut your radio on. Your son might be on the radio. Now, I don't know this guy, okay? Your son might be on the radio today. I'm going to cut it on. I know who he is. I'm outside the door, bro. And that hit me hard, because it wasn't visiting hours for Jeff. It was class time. Yeah. Because here was an individual in front of my eyes that the Lord had placed to act and do as if nobody was looking.
Yeah.
And so I left there thinking to myself, isn't this the guy you want to be? Isn't that what we all need to strive to be, and the character that we need to demonstrate? He was in there alone, man.
Yeah.
And I never forgot it.
Yeah, no, and even like for me, like where my kind of perception as far as being selfless and wanting to help others and all, that all come from my wife. Because I used to be the most selfish person, and that all came from my wife. And like everything else in my life, I try to take things to extremes. So that's what I'm just trying to give back. I'm trying to talk to as many kids as possible. That's why this podcast started, is to encourage young people that you can do it. I know things suck. You're going through hard times. We all do. You can do it. Don't, because young people, the crazy thing about being young in like high school is they're making decisions right now.
Right.
Dropping out of college that affects the rest of their life.
They don't see it.
They don't. They absolutely don't. And we can see it. We can see the train wreck. Because we've been through it, we've lived through it, we've made those same mistakes. And like that's when I go speak, that's one thing that I'll always say is like, I've been in your chair. I was in that chair when there was an old man standing on the stage telling me not to do what I did.
Sure.
Guys, I'm trying to teach you the lessons I've learned. You're going to make your own mistakes. You've got plenty of time, but there's some mistakes you could make right now that could really be devastating to the rest of your life.
And our kids are judged by a lot of things in these schools. They're bullies. They look at the shoes you wear. Everybody can't wear Jordans.
Yeah.
We called them Brogans when I was growing up. You go down to the dime store. Yeah. So that's all they can afford. Walmart stuff that don't make them a bad kid. And the shirts, the shoes, all that stuff, the cars they drive. Yeah. Man, I remember the saddest time when I was working down in Georgetown County. I would pick my kid up from school or whatever, take him home, and there was a young boy there who was left and didn't have a ride. He couldn't get his mom and so forth. And he says, "Mr. Jeff, can you take me home?" "Yes, sir, young man, I sure can." He goes, "I just live down on your street." I'm like, "You live on my street?" He goes, "Yeah." And Jessica, my daughter, said, "Yeah, he lives somewhere on the street." And we didn't know. And so I got him in the car. We were coming home, and he goes, "You can let me off here." "Dude, this is the woods. Well, I'm not letting you off here." He goes, "Well, I want to walk the rest of the way, please." And he was a very sincere young man. "I want to walk the rest of the way home." I said, "Let me assure you this. You're 16, 17 years old. Your mama's going to know that Mr. Jeff let you off in your driveway." And so he goes, "Well, you need to pull up a little bit more, but I really want to walk." And my mind was racing 1,000, but then it dinged. He didn't want me to see where he lives. Yeah. And so we went up a little piece. We made a left into, from the outside, it looks like woods. Had a long driveway back in the back. We pulled up in there. He was ashamed.
Yeah.
He lived in a mobile home, run down, no underpinning, sewer in the yard. Yeah. And I thought to myself, some kid, somebody has tormented him and laughed at him.
Yeah, exactly. I wrote a blog around Christmas time about don't be ashamed about your circumstances. And when I was 14, 15, living in the projects, my mother went to the dollar store and bought 99-cent boxes of chocolate-covered cherries to wrap up and give us Christmas gifts. She wraps these. I'm like, it's a horrible gift. They're stupid 99 cents. Nobody wants this crap. Why? Because I was ashamed that this is all we could afford.
Right.
And she takes those gifts, and we spend all day driving around in her $500 car through Southwest Virginia, passing these things out to her friends. And they didn't have a pot to piss in. I mean, we were all in the same situation. Mm-hmm. And again, when I've had time to grow up, older, wiser, time to reflect, they weren't 99-cent cherries. They were gifts of love.
Right.
That's all it was. So you didn't care about this young man's trailer, but you're exactly right. Whenever I was speaking at Lakewood about bullying, I got Miss Roberts to let me come down and tell my story, and I was telling about when I lived in Oregon, there was a charity called Snowcap. Mm-hmm. Now I was in third grade, so. I don't know how true my mind's eye is of how the actual experience was, but I could remember going into a street level kind of basement in downtownish Portland, garage doors rolled up. You walk in and it's a pile of jeans, a pile of jackets, a pile of shirts. Go find you a pair of jeans. Go find you a jacket. I thought that's how everybody was. Yeah. I mean, it was just life. But I never really had any experiences being bullied. We all were picked on or whatever. What I've learned recently is kind of the new definition, or maybe it was the definition the whole time of bullying, is a pattern.
Yeah, sure.
And when I tell the story about making those girls on the bus cry and stuff like that. It was a pattern. We done it every day. And again, it took me being an adult before it really hit me. And what it was a video that come out probably in 2017 of a young man out of Tennessee. He gets in his mother's car and he's crying about why do people bully and why do people make fun. I think he had a cleft. There was something going on with his mouth. And what hit me wasn't the child crying in the story. It was the mother recording it.
Oh, yeah.
And so then I thought about back then, how did the mother react? How did the mother feel when their daughters walked in crying?
Yeah.
And again, in my mind, I see, what's wrong? Nothing, Mom. Goes to her bedroom, slams the door, and locks herself in there crying, and gets up, goes to the school bus the next day to go through this again. And that's what really got me. I drive down the road and just start crying thinking about this stuff. And I couldn't remember their names. All I could remember was the name we called them. And I finally was able to track them down in December and apologize.
Well, that's great, man.
And but the crazy part, let me back up. You and I were probably raised the same. I know you were because of the background and all that. You protect the weak, you stand up for the weak and all that.
Right.
Jeff, it took me 30 years to realize that I was the weak one. I could have stopped it. I had the opportunity to stop it. They were the courageous ones. They're the ones that showed up every day to take this beating that they didn't need to. And I knew that before I spoke to them on December 3rd. I sent them a message, and I'm laying in the bed, and I hear Messenger on my phone go off, and I won't look at it. So I can't sleep. If they're like, I hate you, you rule my, I couldn't sleep.
Sure.
The next morning, they both said the same thing. They said, I don't really remember you like that, and I'm sorry you've had to carry this so long.
Wow.
So again, that just verified that they were the courageous ones, to have that kind of stuff. But I share those things. I'm ashamed of it, but I share those stories because it was my own insecurities. I did a podcast for some guys Friday. It was my own insecurities. I moved around all the time. I'd lived in 38 homes by the time I was 31 years old.
Wow.
We moved all the time. So the easy way for me to make friends was try to make people laugh.
Sure.
And so we're on the back of the bus trying to cut up, make people laugh, and unfortunately it's at the expense of somebody else. But when I was speaking, I was telling these stories to these kids and I asked if anybody had any questions. The hands that went up.
Yeah.
We ran out of time. There's probably 30 hands up, and it's one young man's like, fifth grade, he's like, I've been bullied since I was in pre-K. That's 2/3 of this young man's life. So that's why I'm doing it. That's why I started this stuff. That's why I want people to, come do this thing. And thank you for doing it. I really appreciate it,
man. Look, I am a very, and I'll kind of close with this, but we were talking about me being in radio earlier and being in a room by myself. If I was a good looking guy, with the talent I have, maybe I could be on TV. But, I was in a terrible car wreck back in 1990 where I should have lost my life. The girl who was driving my car fell asleep driving.
Oh, wow.
And so I'm lucky that my face I've got a huge scar from here to here. I got 300 stitches inside and 300 outside from this location. My nose was torn off here. My lip was torn off. If you look close, you can see it. It's very insecure. I have to put eyeshadow, makeup on my eye every single day to have an eyebrow. Every single day.
Wow.
I probably never shared that with, not with YouTube, but so everybody has insecurities. Everybody has their issues. You have to figure out how to overcome them. Radio has been a way for me to overcome them, and now I kind of you forget it. But it's so I'm a very self-conscious person. Yeah. So being in that radio was but I've learned to adapt with that through the years. The Lord has blessed me and given me more than I deserve. And I'm thankful for it. I have so many friends. Yeah. I'm able to help the community, but in the bigger picture, the community has helped me way more.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's exactly. And that's what's so crazy is, we're so grateful of what's happened and we do things, but it's the community. It's these letters I get from kids that say thank you and you've changed my life. That's the payoff. I mean, it's really changed my life the last few years when I've put an extreme focus on going and being able to speak at schools and we're writing a book on bullying right now. I want to give that thing away, just trying to tell young people to go chase your dreams, do whatever it takes to get there, and just be kind.
Be kind, yeah. And it's easy to do. And if young people are watching and listening to this, understand it as a parent. that we want our kids and any kid to have better, to be better,
Sure.
and to do better than anything that we've ever done.
Yep.
You may think, as I did, that you hate somebody, you hate your mother, you hate your stepmother. You may think that they're being too strict, that they're not being fair. Well, let me just be the first one to tell you it ain't fair. It ain't going to be fair. You ain't going to be fair in business. It ain't going to be fair wherever you go.
Life's not fair.
No, it's not fair. But as parents, we're not in the business to raise hoodlums and thieves and murderers and gangbangers. That's not what we do.
Yeah.
So no matter how bad these kids think we are, we have lived it ourselves. We know a little bit about what we're doing.
Yeah.
So
We were all
nevertheless, I appreciate it, man.
Thank you, my friend. Thanks
it's nice
for doing
to
this.
just sit down and talk about life.
Yeah, I
and,
love it. I
know,
love it, man.
Good luck with your podcast, and Ron Burgundy ain't got nothing on you. How about that?
I appreciate that. Thanks,
You're a
buddy.
good friend, man. Thanks.